Hello everyone, this is Anthony from One Cut Studio. This series seeks to compare the rule set and changes between the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons and the newer 2024 edition. As a DM, my party and I have been using 5th edition for a long time, and we're trying to decide whether or not to make the jump to the 2024 rule set. If you, like me, want to know what changes have been made and if you should make the switch, then this series is for you. We're going to explore main classes, subclasses, and core rules. I'll try to provide one-to-one comparisons whenever possible, but as a disclaimer, I will also share my own opinions as to the design and content. Today, we're going to look at the Monk class. So for the Monk, the core traits we have, you'll see here at the core traits table. Not much has changed. The hit die, saving throw proficiencies, skills, those have all stayed the same. There is one change as far as weapon proficiency is concerned. In 5th edition, you were proficient with simple weapons and short swords. In the 2024 edition, you still have simple weapons, but now they've added martial weapons that have the light property. And basically that just includes the short swords and then the added scimitar. So between the two editions, now you get to use a scimitar. Armor proficiency has stayed the same, so has tool proficiency, and starting equipment has changed. They make it a lot easier for you to choose starting equipment for your character now. You get either A, which gives you a spear and daggers and artisan tools, or the musical instrument, whatever you chose from your tool proficiency above. And then the Explorer's Pack and gold. Or you can just say, hey, just give me 50 gold and I'll be on my way and do my own shopping. So things have stayed the same. Proficiency bonuses, those have stayed the same between the two editions. But they did change quite a bit for the 2024 Monk from the 5th edition Monk. Some good things, some bad things. So you'll see features that are in green have been added. Features in yellow, the mechanics have changed, and features in red have been removed. So we'll go level by level, but if you look at level 1, you'll see unarmored defense and martial arts. Martial arts is in yellow, which means that the mechanic has changed. They do get a buff alert here, 2024. The martial arts die finally has improved. So instead of starting out at a D4, you're starting out at a D6, and it scales all the way up to the D12. And that's fantastic for monks because they really weren't able to hold their own in combat as far as damage output. So giving the monks a higher damage die gives them a little bit more combat power and ability to be more of a threat in combat and more useful in combat as instead of what they were in 5th edition. So you'll see that in 2nd level they have key and unarmored movement. They changed the wording a lot in the 2024 edition to make the monk a little bit less esoteric. So instead of key, it's called Monk's Focus, and instead of expending key points, you're expending focus points. There is something added at level 2 called Uncanny Metabolism that gets the buff alert because that is a really nice enhanced ability that's been added. At 3rd level, instead of Monastic Tradition, it's now called the subclass. We call it for what it is. It's called a subclass. Deflect Missiles actually gets a buff. It changes from Deflect Missiles to Deflect Attacks. We're going to go into that. At 4th level, nothing changes. You still get ability score improvement in Slow Fall. At 5th level, you still get extra attack and Stunning Strike, but Stunning Strike has some caveats. There's a little bit of a buff and a little bit of a nerf, so it has both. It has the buff and the nerf alert for Stunning Strike. At 6th level, you still get Key Empowered Strikes, although in 2024 they call it Empowered Strikes. There is a nerf alert there. And you get your subclass feature. At level 7, evasion, you still get evasion, but the mechanics have changed a little bit as far as evasion is concerned. It's only a slight change, and I think it actually improves on evasion. And then there is stillness of mind. You'll notice that is gone. But some features of stillness of mind come back later on in the 2024 edition. So it's gone from 7th level, but it's not gone completely from the entire class. At level 8, we have ability score improvement. It hasn't changed. At level 9, unarmored movement improvement. So you still get the speed bonuses. That hasn't changed. And they just call it acrobatic movement in the 2024 edition. But basically, it's the same thing as level 9 in the 5th edition, where you're able to run up vertical surfaces and across liquids as part of your movement. So that didn't change. Level 10, they got rid of purity of body, added height and focus, which I think is really good. Height and focus is nice. And then self-restoration, like I said, kind of has the features of stillness of mind from 7th level and 5th edition, but also it draws on a few features from different areas, and we'll go into that in more detail soon. Level 11, nothing changes as far as your subclass feature goes. Nothing changes at 12. At level 13, goodbye tongue of the sun and moon. Instead, you get deflect energy, which, I don't know how I feel about the tongue of the sun and the moon being gone. Deflect energy is really nice, though, to have. Level 14, Diamond Soul becomes Disciplined Survivor. It's the same thing, just worded differently. At level 15, Timeless Body is gone. Again, some of his features are reused in a different feature in the 2024 edition, which we'll talk about that. It gets replaced by Perfect Focus. At level 16, Ability Score Improvement is the same. Subclass feature for level 17 is the same. At level 18, actually, I have to change Empty Body. That one should be highlighted yellow because that one's changed. It does get replaced by Superior Defense, but the mechanics are different. So those two actually should be highlighted yellow. At level 19, we have Ability Score Improvement. You lose that in place of an Epic Boon. And then at level 20, you don't get Perfect Self. That actually is Perfect Focus from level 15 in the 2024 edition. So it's still there, but it's no longer your capstone. Instead, your capstone for level 20 at the 2024 edition is Body and Mind. And we're going to go into all that as we continue. So let's talk about the changes to martial arts. So in 5th edition, you had to use unarmed strikes, your short swords, and any simple melee weapons that weren't two-handed or heavy, and also you couldn't use armor or shields. If you did that, you could use your dex instead of your strength for your attack and damage rolls, for your unarmed strikes and your monk weapons, and then you did a d4 in place of that weapon's normal damage die, which scales with level. Luckily now that for the 2024 edition, it's a d6. But again, so in 5th edition, when you take the attack action, you can also use a bonus action, unarmed strike. So in 2024, how did this change? Well, you have to use your unarmed strikes. Now you get to add simple melee weapons to that. Martial weapons are added to that as long as they have the light property. And again, the same stipulation that you can't use armor or shields. Again, you get to use your dex instead of your strength. But they added this feature that, in addition, when you use the grapple or shove option of your unarmed strike, you can use your dexterity modifier instead of your strength modifier to determine the save DC. So I like that addition. We also like that they changed the damage from a D4 to a D6, and it scales all the way up to a D12 now. And here's the other change, is that you don't need to take the attack action to do a bonus action unarmed strike. So let's say you need to take a potion, but you still want to hit, you can still do that bonus unarmed strike. So your bonus unarmed strike is no longer tied to an attack action as it was in 5e, and I think that's a great change. Moving on, unarmored defense stays the same. Your AC is 10 plus your dex plus your wisdom modifier. All right, so now we move on to level 2, which is your key or your monk's focus now in 2024. There is a little bit of a buff alert here. All right. and we'll go into what those buffs are. So in the 5th edition, you had access to these key points, which, after a short or long rest, you can draw them all back into yourself, but you have to spend 30 minutes meditating to do this. In the 2024 edition, they got rid of that 30-minute stipulation. Because sometimes to me, it's a nice flavor addition, but it slows down the game. Okay, so I can see why they got rid of it. Key save DC still stays the same between both editions. It's still 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your wisdom modifier. So what did you really get for your key? Well, you get 3 techniques: Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind. And in the 2024 edition, they really made some awesome changes to these techniques. So Flurry of Blows in the 5th edition, you needed to do it after an attack action. With the 2024 edition, that stipulation that you need to do an attack action is gone. You can do Flurry of Blows as a bonus action as long as you spend that key point or that focus point to do so. And that gives you 2 unarmed strikes. Now, as we'll see later on that each of these techniques, Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind, also get a boost later on, which makes the monk even more versatile combatant. Patient Defense, whereas before you had to spend a key point to take dodge as a bonus action on your turn, with Patient Defense, you get disengage as a freebie. You don't have to spend a focus point to do so. You can take a bonus action to disengage, kind of similar to what the rogue has. But if you want to dodge on top of that, that's where you have to spend the focus point, and you get both. You get both disengage and dodge, which is fantastic. Step of the Wind is the same thing. Instead of burning a key point to take either disengage or dash, you get dash as a freebie, no expenditure needed. But if you want to do both disengage and dash, you don't have to choose either or. You can expend the focus point and you get to do both disengage and dash as a bonus action on your turn. And your jump distance is still doubled for the turn. Level 2 unarmored movement hasn't changed. You get that speed boost while you aren't wearing armor or using a shield, and this bonus increases by the same at each level between the 2 editions. So it goes up and it's the same. That hasn't changed. You still get the 9th level benefit of walking across liquid surfaces and verticals as part of your movement. So that hasn't changed. Level 2, they added a new ability in 2024 called Uncanny Metabolism. So this again is a huge benefit to the monk. Basically, it's a one-time deal between long rests, but when you roll initiative, you regain all your expended focus points. So you just suck them right back into your body. And on top of that, you get to heal a number of hit points equal to your monk level plus the number you roll. So you roll your martial art die. And so let's say it's a D6, because you started a D6. You get that number plus your monk level back. But again, as powerful as that is, you can only do this once per long rest. So in the meantime, but you still have the ability to take a short rest and get back your expended key points. So really, you don't have to be as conservative with your key points as you used to be in the 5th edition. You can go through them. You can use them for things, and that gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you want to play your monk. So level 3, you get your subclass. They have the same subclasses available to you across the editions, with the addition of the Warrior of Mercy, which was from a 5th edition supplement that they added now to the 2024 edition. So you still have Way of the Shadow is Warrior of Shadow. Way of the Four Elements is, Warrior of the Elements, and the Way of the Open Hand is now Warrior of the Open Hand. Another video will have to go into the changes they made to those, because I do know that At least in the Warrior of the Open Hand, they nerfed the Quivering Palm a bit, which was one of the big draws of that subclass. So another video will have to be done on that. Moving on, level 3, Deflect Missiles gets a big boost in 2024. So before, you could basically redirect a ranged weapon attack, which is great. But what about other attacks? You're a monk. You should be able to block and deflect all sorts of attacks. And the 2024 version rectifies that. So basically now it's you use reaction to reduce an attack's damage against you if that attack includes bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a ranged attack. This applies to melee attacks too. And again, you can redirect those melee attacks back at a creature within 5 feet of you now, or within 60 feet of you if it was ranged. The only difference is instead of you making an attack roll using your monk proficiency, the creature now has to make a dex save. And the damage, instead of having to figure out, what the weapon was and what your modifier is, it's basically using your martial arts die. So let's say your martial arts die is a d6. You're able to reduce the damage from attack down to 0. That means you can, as part of your action, reflect it back. They make their saving throw. If they fail, all right, then you get to roll your 2d6 plus your dex. So it streamlines it and it makes it easier, and the damage is the same typed up by the attack. So it's great now that the monk can redirect all sorts of attacks. And actually, this deflect attacks gets a boost later on in level as well. Level 4, Slow Fall, no change. Use reaction to reduce damage taken from a fall by 5 times your monk level. Very cool thing for monks to have. I'm glad they kept it in. Level 5, Stunning Strike. Okay, here we go. It's a buff alert and it's a nerf alert. So we're going to talk about what that buff is and what that nerf is. So in 5th edition, you interfere with the flow of ki in a creature's body. When you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can spend a ki point to attempt a stunning strike. They must succeed on a con save or be stunned until the end of your next turn. Now that function still exists in 2024. Basically, they have to make a con save, and if they fail, they get stunned until the start of the next turn. The problem is, here's the nerf. Okay, it's limited to once per turn. So in 5th edition, any strike, as long as you wanted to boost it with a ki point, could have been a stunning strike, right? It's limited now to 1 per turn, and it has to be with a monk weapon or an unarmed strike. Okay? So there goes the days of stun locking multiple attackers at once on your turn. All right? However, there still is bad effects for a successful save, which I don't necessarily agree with, because then what's the point of a successful save? So with the 2024 edition, on a successful save, the target's speed is halved until the start of your next turn, and the next attack roll made against the target before then has advantage. So there's some things I like and some things I don't like. It stinks that they nerfed it to 1 per turn. But it also seems strange to me that even though the creature saved, they're still taking a bad penalty. Half speed and next attack roll made it at advantage against them. That's not fair. You do that to a player, they'd be like, hey, I saved. Why is my speed halved? And what? That just doesn't seem fair for saving. I feel like there's a better way for them to have it just not be a lost ki point. So I feel like the Stunning Strike needs a little bit of a rework, because otherwise, you don't want your monk to feel cheated of a ki point. I understand that, but I also don't think it's fair to impose, 2 penalties on a successful save. That brings us to level 6, which is the Ki Empowered Strikes. And the Ki Empowered Strikes also nerf alert because in 5th edition, your strikes were magical for overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical damage. But in the 2024 edition, whenever you deal damage with your unarmed strike, it can deal your choice of force damage or your normal damage type. So guess what? Sorry, Monk, your strikes are no longer magical. If you want to do magical damage to overcome damage resistance, then you need to use a magical monk weapon like +1 nunchucks. I guess the only caveat is that not many creatures are immune to force damage. But, for these purposes, Monk, you're no longer magical. Level 7, Evasion. The mechanics for evasion didn't change very much. The only difference is that in the 2024 edition, you don't get any benefit from evasion if you are incapacitated. So level 7, Stillness of Mind from 5th edition is gone. However, it's gone at level 7, but it gets added back in under the feature called Self-Restoration at 10th level. So just to familiarize yourself with Stillness of Mind, it was you use an action to end an effect on yourself, causing you to be charmed or frightened. And actually, the Self-Restoration ability at 10th level on the 2024 edition expands upon it and actually makes it better because it takes away the use an action for that ability. So we'll go into that soon. At level 9, we talked about that acrobatic movement. That was the running up walls and along water. Level 10, Heightened Focus, something I really like. This is a buff alert. So here you are, a monk, and your bread and butter are your energy or your focus maneuvers. So Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind, they get upgrades. Why not? That's fantastic. So Flurry of Blows, guess what? Instead of 2 unarmed strikes, now you get 3. Patient Defense, now when you expend a focus point to use Patient Defense, you also gain a number of temporary hit points equal to 2 rolls of your martial art die. So that's really handy. And remember, Patient Defense is one of those ones that you can take and not expend a focus point. So like you could do, get just the disengage. But if you wanted the disengage and the dodge, then you need to expend the point. So expending the point would get you the disengage, the dodge, and the temporary hit points. So that's really, really good. Step of the Wind is similar to the same thing. Now you can bring somebody with you when you Step of the Wind. So before, monks, we use Step of the Wind to try to get people away from danger, right? And because we have such good movement, we'd have to use our action to grab onto somebody and, potentially, you're wasting your turn running people around the room. Well, in this case, you're not wasting your action in order to grab somebody. It's part of your bonus action now, Step of the Wind. So now you can bring somebody with you that is large or smaller, and they move with you until the end of your turn. And the other great thing about this is that the creature's movement doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. So that makes your monk a great rescuer. I can see a lot of monks saving people from burning buildings. All right, moving on to level 10. Purity of Body with the 5th edition is gone. Goodbye immunity to disease and poison. And instead, self-restoration is what you get. So at the end of each of your turns, you can end one of the following conditions on yourself: charmed, frightened, or poisoned. In addition, foregoing food and drink doesn't give you levels of exhaustion. So the changes get rid of immunity to disease and poison. It's almost a moot point because, at least where poison is concerned, because you can end it on yourself. The great thing about this is you don't need to use an action. It's just at the end of your turn, you just end it. But you only get to end one. So if you have charmed, frightened, and poisoned, all those conditions, you still have to wait several turns in order to end all those on you. So you're not technically immune to poison, but you can get rid of poison. It combines aspects of the level 7 ability Stillness of Mind and the level 15 ability Timeless Body. But the trouble with that is you can be aged magically now. It doesn't give you poison immunity. The only other good thing, like I said, it's free. It doesn't require an action to do so. So this is a mixed bag of abilities here. Level 13, Tongue of the Sun and Moon in 5th edition is gone. That's where you understand all spoken languages, and a creature can understand a language, understand what you say as long as it can understand a language. I think they got rid of this ability because it really doesn't make sense for a monk, a combatant. It would make more sense for a sorcerer or a class with a higher charisma, because then when you could do things with, being able to understand languages or communicating. So if you're not a very good communicator, then why are you communicating with other creatures? What they give you instead for 2024 is Deflect Energy. So your Deflect Missiles, your Deflect Attacks feature, that gets an even better boost now, because now you can deflect any type of attack against you, not just bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. You can also deflect energy. I don't know how. So I imagine that would be like some undead's chill touch, where it comes up and does cold damage to you. You'd be able to deflect that. All right, moving on to level 14, Diamond Soul and Disciplined Survivor. It's the same thing. Nothing's changed, just it's reworded differently. So that basically gives you proficiency in all saving throws, which I'm glad they kept. And then allowing you to spend a key point or a focus point to reroll it. All right, moving on to level 15. For 5e, you had Timeless Body, which again was like you don't suffer the frailty of age, and you can't be aged magically, and you no longer need food or water. Well, I can understand, that as being a monk ability, but I guess with the new edition, they want monks to be able to be aged. So sorry, monks, you will suffer all the benefits of being geriatric like the rest of us. So in 2024, they give you Perfect Focus, which was basically, this is a retooling of the 20th level capstone for the 5th edition, which was when you roll initiative and you don't have any key points left, you get 4, basically. But the way it's worded is for 2024 is when you roll initiative and you don't use Uncanny Metabolism, you regain expended focus points until you have 4, or if you have 3 or fewer. So basically, they don't want you running out of key points when you start combat. Now remember, Uncanny Metabolism was the one where it gave you all your key points back and it healed you, but it was only once per long rest. And if you didn't short rest in between to gain your hit points back, your focus points back, you would start combat without any focus points. So this kind of negates, this gives you a situation where, let's say you're completely spent of focus points, you haven't had a chance to short rest to get them all back, you don't have Uncanny Metabolism anymore, but you start a combat, hey, you at least will get 4. And that will get you, a few things that you can do. All right, moving on to level 18, which is in 5th edition was Empty Body. As an action, you can spend 4 key points to go invisible for a minute. During that time, you have resistance to all damage except force damage. And this is the other one where you can spend 8 key points to cast the Astral Projection spell without material components, but you can't take anyone with you. They got rid of that. They got rid of the 4 key points to go invisible, and they got rid of the 8 key points to cast Astral Projection. I think it was a cool feature, but probably one that many monks didn't use very often. So they wanted to make, again, they got rid of some of the esoteric monk abilities, like turning invisible and going to the astral plane and having an unageable body. instead replacing that for more combat-focused and practical features. So in 2024, you get superior defense. At the start of your turn, you can expend focus points to bolster yourself against harm for a minute or until you have the incapacitated condition. During that time, you have resistance to all damage except force damage. So that resistance to everything except force for a minute stays the same. What's great about superior defense in 2024 is that it's 3 key points, or I'm sorry, 3 focus points, and it's at the start of your turn. It's not necessarily an action. So you just turn it on like an ability. You turn it on like a switch, you expend those key points, or you expend those focus points, and for a minute you have that damage resistance. So that's pretty cool for a level 18 ability. Probably more useful than being able to astrally project. Level 19, you get an epic boon instead of that ability score improvement. We've talked about this in previous videos. And then at level 20, instead of Perfect Self, which is the 5th edition one where you have no key points when you roll initiative, getting 4, that's covered by Perfect Focus at level 15 in 2024. In the 2024 edition, you get Body and Mind, which your Dexterity and Wisdom scores increase by 4 to a maximum of 25. That's a big stat boost, but again, it seems kind of lazy for a level 20 capstone ability, in my opinion. So I think that could use a little bit of work. Make the monk a little bit more cool. Give them something cool at level 20. The Perfect Self wasn't cool either, so I think there's still room for improvement. All right, so let's talk about the good, the bad, and the meh. The good. All right, we get more damage die. We get higher damage die for our martial arts die. We can use our martial arts die to do different things, whether that's heal ourselves, or reflect damage back on an enemy that's attacked us. Uncanny Metabolism. We get to heal ourselves and top up our key points. Fantastic. And that's a level 2 ability. So you get that early on. The changes to deflect missiles, now to deflect attacks and deflect energy, very useful in combat. Fantastic for the monk. The improved focus features, the boost, the flurry of blows, the patient defense, the step of the wind, all those changes are fantastic. And then the self-restoration where, it's no longer an action to do so, to end that charmed, frightened, or poisoned on yourself. And even the defense, the superior defense, where it's not action, but you expend those key points and you get, that resistance to damage for a minute. All right, so let's talk about the bad. Stunning Strike, limited once per turn. I also don't like the fact that a save gives you a double whammy of negative abilities. Something negative happens to you for saving. And 2 things. So I don't like that either. Empowered Strikes, you're no longer magical. You can do force damage instead. I don't like that. The loss of purity of body, the disease resistance component, I don't like that. As for the monk, I feel like the monk should have disease resistance. And then the resistance to magical aging, it's not like that's a mechanic that comes up often, but I just thought it's a cool feature that should have been kept. And then the epic boon, like I said, it's a cheap, easy way to throw power at a level 19 character. And then the body and mind, stat boosts are great, but for a level 20 capstone, I think we could do better. So that's the monk. Hopefully you liked it and found it insightful. If you found it useful in any way, please give it a like, leave a comment, or share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos. And once again, thank you for watching.